Good morning, everyone. I'm David Stefansson, chairman of Varðberg, and I'll be guiding this conversation for the next 40 minutes. We have an excellent panel here with us today to explore the central question. What role does the Council of Baltic States play in today's security and political landscape? Let me first briefly introduce our speakers. First, Right Honorable Arthur Harashim, the Deputy Minister of Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He oversees European bilateral cooperation, consular and treaty affairs and crisis management. He served as an ambassador to Belgium and has been senior figure in the Polish diplomacy since 1993. Second, Mrs. Anna Hjartardóttir, Director General for International Affairs and Security at the Ministry, Iceland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She brings more than 2 decades of experience from MFA, UNDP, and the World Bank. And third, Mr. Gustav Lindström. He's the Director General for CBSS. He took office in 2024 as serving Deputy Director General and previously led EU Institute for Security Studies, with earlier roles at GCSP, RAND, and the World Bank as well. Thank you all for joining us here. Let me maybe open up for broad questions to all 3 of you. And first, and this is particularly important for the Icelanders, and this was touched up by the minister as well, what is the unique role for CBSS today? What does it do that NATO, Nordic Council, NB8, or other regional bodies do not? In other words, why does the CBS need to exist? What gap does it fill, and what is the organization's added value to the current security environment? Maybe I trust you, Mr. Min.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, a very good question. Yes, why we need the Baltic Sea, the Council of the Baltic Sea States? Why this is the moment for this organization? It's true, the Baltic Sea region is well networked, connected. Yes, we are members of NATO, some of us members of the European Union. There is NB8 format, very active. And well, this is the time for the CBSS. This is the only organization today which is forum for high-level political dialogue, consultations, exchange among all democratic states, countries of the region. And we mean extended region with Iceland, how it was explained by your foreign minister. The organization has been established in 1992, as it was also mentioned. A year before I joined Foreign Service, I realized during your presentation. Well, it was active, it was used, it was focused on different topics than the security and political exchange. But today we all see that in this difficult, very complicated geopolitical situation, this is the organization where we meet among democracies, among like-minded states, and there is a proof, yes, since the Estonian presidency, Vihula Declaration, we see the progress. Our foreign ministers met this year 3 times. One, it was online meeting, but they met 3 times. There was a meeting first time of the political directors. I was told it was very good meeting, very good exchange. There was a new format meeting of legal advisors. So we see this is the forum for an exchange. Plus, we have expertise of the organization itself and the structure, the Director General and his staff, who are helping us member states a lot. And of course, there are some projects for the future. It was also mentioned by Minister Gunnarsdóttir, the YAF, yes, the programs for young people, thinking about the future of Europe and of our region especially. So this is in a nutshell how I see the role of the organization today.
Thank you. Is it on?
I think this works, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, and great being here today. I fully agree with all of what you said, so I'm not going to repeat, but just 2 or maybe 3 key issues. One, which the Minister also mentioned, and well, now I'm repeating you what you mentioned, is that this is a group of countries, like-minded countries, that are now working together, enhancing their collaboration in very difficult times. And unlike what was before, now it's a group of countries that are all NATO members, which also brings us together. This was not the case when the CBSS was founded, so very important. Second is that the CBSS has shown that it can adapt itself. And it was founded on a certain vision, then things have changed since then. There was the moment where members of the CBSS were joining the EU, which called for kind of a revision of how the Council worked, and now we're in fundamental different times. And we can kind of use the Council in the way it works best for us. And now it is in facing these security challenges and strengthening the political pillar as the Polish presidency has done. And then third, and this comes to the traditional work of the CBSS, where you have these working groups that are doing incredibly important work. And what I've seen, and from my talk to Icelanders that have been working in this group, for example, on child protection, on civil protection, this work has been incredibly important for them. And I've explicitly asked, is this work being done somewhere else? Are we duplicating? And they tell me, no, this is unique, and we want to continue this. So I think these 3 points I would like to highlight.
Director Lindström.
Thank you. And before I begin, I also would like to thank the organizers very much for putting this event together, Varðberg, the Embassy of Poland here in Iceland, also the Polish presidency that I've had the pleasure to work with very closely. Artur, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you and colleagues, and we are also feeling the same now with Iceland as we will be working more closely together. Let me be brief, but let me give 3 very quick reasons for why the CBSS brings value added. The first one has been said, but it needs to be said clearly, and that has to do with the membership. This is an organization that, unlike many other organizations operating in the Baltic Sea region, include Poland and Germany. When you add those 2 countries, you're adding a very large and substantive GDP, population, but also other types of influence and power into the organization. It also has the EU as a member. So the membership is something that shouldn't be downplayed. It is an opportunity. The second point for why the organization brings value added is that, unlike many other organizations in the region, as it originated with a very flexible mandate, so it has 3 long-term priorities. One is a safe and secure region, one is a desire for a sustainable and prosperous region, and the third is about regional identity. When you have those 3 long-term priorities, it gives an organization the ability to see linkages across issues, across challenges, but also to try to deliver solutions that are a bit more broad. So maybe other organizations are much more focused on 1 or 2 issues. For the CBSS, there's a wide opportunity. And we see now, for example, when we have some officials speaking about the Baltic Sea, and they're speaking perhaps about the fact that the Baltic Sea is not doing very well because of the lack of oxygen in the water. There are other groups that say, well, we also have a lot of munitions from the World Wars that are buried in the water. So a lot of different issues can be seen simultaneously. So that is also an advantage for the organization. And lastly, it is a light footprint organization. It is not heavy. For those of you, I know there's a lot of ambassadors here. You have sat in different constellations within the EU, within NATO, other organizations. This is an organization with very like-minded countries, very practical countries, a very light secretariat that I have the honor to serve. And that means that we can adapt. It's not like a big tanker that goes quite slowly. We can really move quickly. And we have seen that now after the Vihula Declaration in 2025, when the foreign minister said, you need to change, you need to reform and refocus and deepen your engagement in security and safety. And that's what the organization did very quickly. And we can come back a bit later to the work of the expert groups, but those would be three very quick kind of unique characteristics of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another broad question for the three of you. And keep in mind, so most of the viewers are here online because this meeting is streamed, and this is also to the general public. So keep that in mind for that question. And that is, how do you assess the work or the achievements of the Polish presidency for the last year? I mean, it could be
I should be modest.
Yes, to you. But in the end of the day, what has it changed, and what is the value that it was added to the organization? And maybe, Undersecretary, if you could, like in 1 minute version, tell us what was the emphasis
but in a modest way,
of the
yes,
Polish presidency,
okay.
and how do you see? What was it? What are the main achievements of that?
Thank you very much. First, we have to remember and understand the nature of the organization. Like Gustav mentioned, it's light. It's not NATO. It's not the European Union where we adopt legislation. So it's a different kind of organization. Second, we also have to remember that presidency, it's also about working and with the previous and the next one. Yes? So it's passing this torch from one state to another state. So we build on the achievements of the Estonian presidency and discussion of the reform of the CBSS at the time. What we have not achieved, I think the number of meetings, I already mentioned three meetings of foreign ministers, good meetings with good discussions, meetings of experts, new meetings also I mentioned with political directors and legal advisors, Director General for Legal Affairs. I see my colleague Cecilia from Foreign Ministry of Iceland who participated in those meetings. So a new discussion which is on the agenda of the CBSS, I believe. 100 events at different levels all together in Stockholm, in Poland, in Brussels, Strasbourg. There was a very good seminar in Munich where Gustav participated with our deputy foreign minister on the CBSS and the role of the CBSS. And also at the end of this period, our experts from Polish two think tanks presented reports on possible ways for the future development of the CBSS. So, and we are passing this to Iceland.
Mr. Hjartardóttir, how do you see this? Now you're taking over the presidency, looking, to evaluate what is the takeout and what are the achievements on the Polish.
In short, I could just say it's very big shoes to fill.
Thank you. Very kind. Very kind.
I would say the Polish presidency has brought the CBSS to a new level of ambition, but also of activities and even and visibility. The CBSS all of a sudden, or maybe not all of a sudden, but increasingly has become a known figure. Even in Madrid, I think it's today, we have an event organized by the Polish embassy and the Icelandic embassy on the CBSS and hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea region. And this is in Spain, which wouldn't be maybe so evident a few years back. So this is what has been achieved. The focus has been on the political pillar, as you mentioned, and there have been more meetings, more engagements on the political side, which really matters now and is incredibly valuable. And I think that would perhaps be the greatest takeaway, that, and of course the focus on security, hybrid threats, and this shared threat assessment we have in the region. Yeah, I think that would be the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know it's a difficult question for you, but could you maybe enumerate what do you see?
David, this is actually an easy question for me because, as I mentioned before, we at the Secretariat get to work very closely with the Polish presidency. I see colleagues here, Katarzyna, who will be speaking later, Minister Harazim, and many others. But I think we have to remind ourselves that when Poland took over the presidency, the CBSS was at a pivotal point in its history. The ministers were taking into account a report by two wise persons, former president of Estonia, former foreign minister of Lithuania, who were actually giving the organization two paths. And the ministers said, well, we want to go on a path of reform and refocus. We want a greater focus on security. And that's what the Polish presidency did. So we have to remind ourselves that for the Polish presidency, this was a bit of entering terra incognita. This is a new path for the organization. And they were able to manage that very effectively. And I can say this as not being within the Polish presidency, but being somebody in the Secretariat. And this has meant that under the Polish presidency, it had to navigate very challenging waters because it had to gauge from the member states, how do you see the organization's engagement in security? For some countries, this is very sensitive. They have very strong attachment with NATO. They have a history of how they want to do these things. Other member states maybe feel that this is a great opportunity. And Poland then had to navigate those waters and try to understand, where do we see eye to eye? Where do we see maybe some differences? They wrote several internal papers to try to summarize the positions of the member states going forward. These were discussed. And there was a mapping exercise done. We will hear more about that later to show what other organizations were doing. So Poland did all of this while doing over 100 activities. I'm very familiar with the event in Madrid because they were trying to see if I could be there. But I said, you're doing another event here in Reykjavik. And it's very difficult to be in both places at the same time. So only to say that the fact that there was a navigation of new territory, the fact that there was a need to understand how to go down that path while being very active, and then there were new activities, I think that speaks very highly to the achievements of the Polish presidency, if I may say so. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I turn to individual questions now. Under Secretary Harazim.
More difficult, no.
For you. Poland has given a little new momentum on legal cooperation with the CBSS, especially on the law of the sea, and I think the Icelanders would find this interesting particularly. How would you describe this work, and what should come next out of that?
Yes, thank you for this question, because I'm personally was involved in this work. Legal advisors of foreign ministers, they meet in different fora: EU, Council of Europe, NATO, but also in the broadest of the UN. And we discuss questions which are on political, but also international, on the agenda of public international law. And those meetings, I would say, came out of necessity. What we see? We see problems in the Baltic Sea, great challenges. The shadow fleet, we see threats to critical underwater infrastructure. Those are security questions, but also legal questions. How we do apply UN Convention on the law of the sea. And this question was debated in other forums, but then after a discussion with our foreign minister Sikorski, we came to a conclusion, well, this is the group which is most interested, because questions were raised also during meetings of foreign ministers. They asked us for expertise, so Poland decided to convene first very informal meeting in Strasbourg, then more formal in Stockholm at the headquarters of the CBSS. And we are trying to exchange our expertise, discuss problems which are on the agenda, but also discuss possibilities how we can get a unified interpretation of the convention in order to solve problems, to help the freedom of navigation, let's say, in the Baltic Sea. And I hope this process will be continued. We have a VTC scheduled for next week, and also hope that the Icelandic presidency will continue this work. Of course, it depends on needs. If there is a need for such a consultation, then should be a meeting and should be a joint exchange and joint work. And just to conclude, personally, I really believe that it makes sense to discuss first among states which are most affected by those problems we face today in the Baltic Sea region, all those dangers to the freedom of navigation, and then with the more or less united positions or discussed first position go to the most broader forums where we talk to other states. Sorry for a bit too long.
No problem. Can I add one more individual question? That's on the cooperation between Iceland and Poland. Within CBSS and more broadly on going forward. Can you give us a 2-minute version of that?
Okay.
Or 3.
Well, I have to admit that this is my first visit to Iceland. And yesterday I had very good meeting with my counterpart at the Foreign Ministry, State Secretary, Permanent State Secretary. We had a long exchange on bilateral, but not even bilateral questions, and we came to the conclusion that our bilateral relations are excellent. As a proof, this year only, we had a meeting of prime ministers, a very good meeting. There was a visit of the president of the Icelandic parliament in Poland. We continue to meet in different forums. There is very good cooperation between parliaments. We have Polish community here, the Polish diaspora in Iceland, of which we are particularly proud, I have to say, because I hear so many positive opinions about contribution of Poles to life and economy of Iceland. What we might improve is a trade exchange. There is certainly space for more trade between our two countries, not only exportation of Prince Polo, but cooperation, energy, and other.
Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
On Prince Polo?
On the trade.
On the trade.
How to improve that?
How to improve it? Poland is a large market, and 38 million people. A large market for investments of Icelandic companies, financial sector, not only. We can learn a lot on energy for you, but also I see that Iceland might be a good direction for our export. Maybe agriculture products, we'll see. So certainly this is the topic on which we have to think and discuss more how we can improve those ties. And within the CBSS, it's excellent cooperation. I have to say, between our two states, between our two ministries. So only positive message and news on this topic. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Can I turn to Hjartardóttir? I want to ask you on the experience of Iceland towards the, CBSS, and maybe you could elaborate a bit on those priorities mentioned by the ministers for the coming years under Iceland presidency.
Yes. So on the experience, I think it is the experience until now and then what will come. So until now, I think our approach to the CBSS has been quite practical, and it's our engagement, of course, has been through the what is it called again? The committee.
The Committee of Senior Officials.
Senior Officials Committee, but it has been mostly through the working groups. And there I'd like to mention the working group on children at risk, where we have participated very actively, and where, for example, the Icelandic model of the Barnahús was taken and scaled up and brought to member states of the CBSS. So that has been kind of the focus today, a very practical focus on practical areas of collaboration. And now we are seeing, as the other members and as was done so well under the Polish presidency, is that the political pillar is gaining strength. So our experience in the past few years has been, and this is what the minister has valued a lot, it has been this increased engagement on the political side, which covers a lot of areas, and some areas that have not traditionally been dealt with by the CBSS, but are linked to the security environment that we are faced with.
Which areas?
Well, the challenge, the threat posed by Russia, the hybrid threats, the shadow fleet, and just the context that we are living in. And here we share those challenges with the countries in the Baltic Sea region, as these are the same challenges as we face here. And I know they will go into this in more detail in the panel that comes after us. Of course, the countries in the Baltic Sea regions are more subject to these threats, direct subjects, but we share the perception. So so that's the experience to date. As to our priorities, resilience will be kind of a cross-cutting theme. And resilience has to do with the abilities of societies to bounce back when there's some kind of adversity. And this can be natural hazards, it can be something that comes from within society, and it can be security threats and even war. So this will cut across our work. We will focus especially like she mentioned too, on civil protection, and we have the civil protection network. There we have a lot to share. We come from a country that has a lot of experience when it comes to especially dealing with natural hazards, and we intend to bring that experience and lessons to the CBSS and share, but also there is a lot of experience in other member states. Then there is the network on child protection, where also resilience will feature, and there we will focus on vulnerable children, refugee children. A lot of the children that are refugees in the region now are coming from Ukraine. So there's an opportunity to look at how we can best welcome them, how we can deal with their trauma, and of course this will contribute to the resilience of our societies. Then there's a network on trafficking in human beings. This working group, I understand, celebrates its 20th year anniversary this year. So we will look into what has been achieved and also try to see what can be done better when it comes to this awful matter, human trafficking, which of course in times of war we see, there's a potential of seeing more of that, unfortunately. So this resilience theme cuts across, and then there are more areas. There's the youth element, of course there's Ukraine. We would like to follow in the steps of the Polish presidency with close engagement with Ukraine as an observer state. Then Iceland will also hold the presidency of the Baltic Sea Parliamentary Forum at the same, that coincides with our presidency. So we will work with Málþingið to try to make the most out of both presidencies at the same time. Then this is more on maybe on the practical side. On the political side, we have, as I said before, we have greatly valued how that pillar has gained strength, and we intend to continue to do that. And I know the minister is very keen on doing that, be it at the ministerial level or at the political directors level, as you mentioned. So exciting times ahead, and we're going to try to do our best in the
Can I
coming
add
year.
one more question?
Yeah.
You mentioned these meetings of the political directors became more visible under in the Polish presidency. Do you see this as a useful format, and will Iceland continue, or is Iceland prepared to continue that format, more meetings of the political directors?
It was a very useful meeting when it happened this year, and this whole strengthening of the political pillar, which this is a part of, has been very useful. The way we look at things, we tend to be quite practical, so there has to be an added value. So I would like to continue those meetings, provided that there is actually something to discuss and something that we want to achieve together. And I think now we're not short of subjects, and it is very valuable for these colleagues, the political directors in the CBSS. This is the only format where we can sit together and discuss this issue. There's no other formal format to do that. And there the focus is on security-related issues. It's on Ukraine, it's on hybrid threats, and it's on the security challenges that we're facing. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Lindström, question to you. How do you assess the cooperation between the member states and the CBSS secretariat? So looking at the secretariat, what works well? What could be improved going forward? And what would you ask Iceland to prepare for its presidency when it comes to the cooperation between the secretariat and the member states?
Well,
like a wish list.
Yeah, okay, wish list. No.
For the secretariat.
But let's begin with your first question, which is about how is the working relationship between the Secretariat and the Presidency and the Member States in general. I would say that thankfully we have good mechanisms for ensuring a very frequent exchange between the parties. So for example, the Committee of Senior Officials, which is usually made up of ambassadors and other senior officials of the member states, they will meet between 5 and 6 times per year. So, I mean, if you discount the summer period, this is almost a meeting every 2 months, where the officials have an opportunity to discuss both substantive issues, for example, regarding the expert groups, the task force, or any other formation where officials get together, and also to look at administrative issues. So ample bridges for exchanges that way. Then also for the Secretariat, we work very, very closely with the Presidency. We have meetings every week. These are online meetings. They can be very fast if there's not much that we need to discuss. But if there are issues to discuss, we have that opportunity. And we can also invite other individuals to join those meetings. So I see the CSO from Iceland here in the room, Emil, one of them. But I know that there are other colleagues here in this room that we will be working very closely with, and we look forward to that. So what I'm trying to say, lots of opportunities for exchanges. Also, let's not forget, if I take one step back, I was very happy, Anna, that you mentioned the expert groups and what they will be focusing on in your presidency now. But also to remember that what these groups do is very practical. And I know that this will come up in the next session, but just to give 1 or 2 examples, within the work of the Civil Protection Network, through a mechanism where the CBSS has worked with Sweden's Agency for Civil Protection or Defense and Resilience, we had a train-the-trainer program in the Ukraine to teach about emergency response medicine. And this started under the Estonian presidency. Through that train-the-trainer program, 90,000 people in the Ukraine received training in how to do this very quick emergency medical kind of giving somebody help when needed. Very practical, very quick. Under the task force for trafficking against human beings, we developed an investigation protocol to strengthen countries' abilities, especially their law enforcement, on how to do investigations into trafficking. The work was so extensive and done so well among the countries that Europol, the European Police Organization, engaged and supported it too. And now they're making this protocol available to all European countries through its Siena network. So these are practical examples. And for the Secretariat and the member states, it's very important that we have this opportunity to do very practical outputs. So it's officials getting together. It's very practical work. It's a forum for sharing lessons identified. So I tend to say this. We share lessons identified, and then hopefully we learn those lessons. And then also a great space for sharing good practice. And that's what works well. Your final point about working now with Iceland and the wish list, so far, I think everything is going really well because I know Iceland has indicated that we will be working very closely because we need to support each other. We have limited capacity. And also, I was very happy to hear that there will be engagements across the so-called trio, which means the Icelandic presidency, the future Swedish presidency, and the previous Polish presidency. That gives the organization a red thread. So on my wish list is simply to keep up this way of working, and I think that we will do good progress moving forward.
Just a follow-up question. So asking you about describing the cooperation among the CBSS member states more broadly, and this is particularly when it comes to the activities of the Baltic states towards the Russian aggression. As you know, the Icelanders are quite concerned about the Russian aggression. So maybe just your comment on that.
Yeah. So through the CBSS, but other organizations as well, Minister Gunnarsdóttir made references to the great web of organizations engaging in this, from the EU and NATO, Nordic Council of Ministers, the NB8, the Joint Expeditionary Force. There is HELCOM. There are many organizations, but within the CBSS, given the practicality of work, we are able to discuss now under the umbrella of hybrid issues. I think Minister Harrison made references to the legal aspects with respect to the shadow fleet. But we have also had opportunities to discuss not just things on the water, but also under the water. We are hoping to support a memorandum of understanding on the protection of critical undersea infrastructure. If we look on the air, I mean, there have been many air incursions by drones, aircraft, balloons, for smuggling, all kinds of things. You will hear in the next panel about a report that was done outlining all these sabotage and other types of operations on CBSS member states. We have chances to discuss these, and even when we look at space, as you know, there's a lot of jamming of satellite signals affecting the member states of the CBSS. There's a report that suggests that if you add up all the days a member state of the CBSS had some kind of jamming of signals from space, if you add those days, it's over 7,000 days where a member state collectively have had an impact since, I would say, March of 2022 till today. So we have opportunities to discuss how we can address some of these issues. And there are groups that were split off or came out of the CBSS, for example, on border control and cooperation, where they discuss how to go around jamming and where to position certain things to limit the effects of jamming. So extremely practical, and I think this is something of benefit to all the member states.
Thank you. We have to be concerned about timing, of course. Maybe any last comments before we close this up? Under Secretary.
Last comments. Well, out of pragmatism, I would say, this is the time for the CBSS. We share the Scandinavian states, Iceland, also Poland, Germany, the same approach, and we need, this is the moment to use this organization.
Yes, I fully agree. As the minister said at the beginning of her speech, the CBSS has perhaps been an organization that has operated quietly. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people know much about it. I did not know much about the CBSS perhaps 2 years ago. I've been doing my homework. I've been working closely with the Polish presidency and the Secretariat. And there are a lot of opportunities. And this is really a unique forum that we should use to our advantage.
Director Lindström.
Yeah, for us as Secretariat, we're simply very grateful to have the opportunity to work together with all the member states, and we wish to continue to serve them as best possible. And of course, we bring the lessons that we also receive from previous presidencies, and look forward to the work now very much with Iceland. But again, it's been a really good experience. I'm relatively new at the organization, but with Poland, very good presidency, so very grateful for that.
Thank you, and big thanks to our panelists for their thoughtful contribution. The key message today is clear. The CBSS has a distinct role, not by duplicating others, as we mentioned, but connecting the regions where it matters the most. Let's carry these thoughts with us as we head for a coffee break. Enjoy, and we will reconvene shortly. Thank you.